Hi, this video is to help prepare you for our projectile motion lab, which I've sometimes called Level the Lizard. What you'll need for this lab are the following things. A metal track, like this black track here, some books so you can elevate that track, a metal sphere. We're going to use the metal spheres that we used previously. They have a hole drilled in the middle, so we'll talk about that in a second. A stopwatch, carbon paper, which you might not know what that is yet, a target, and some meter sticks. So our target will look something like this. I made this larger so you could kind of see what the idea was. We'll put the lizard in the middle, and that's what we're going to try to hit during the lab. So the goal of this lab is to roll the ball down the track, right, from the same position every time, from the same position on the track every time. Let it roll, and then predict where it's going to land on the floor. So your goal is to place the target on the floor so that it gets hit on the first time. So you'll have to measure some things we'll talk about in a second, but our target will look something like this. It'll be a little smaller, and we're going to put a piece of carbon paper over top of that target. Now, in the old days, we used carbon paper to make copies of things. So you could put a sheet in your typewriter, and as you typed, two pieces of paper, one on top, one on bottom, and whatever you did on the top one will get transferred to the sheet underneath. So we'll use that target as the bottom sheet, and we'll cover it up with the carbon paper, black side down. And when the ball hits that sheet on the floor, it'll make a nice dark black mark, and we can tell exactly where the ball hit on the piece of paper. So that's what the carbon paper is for. And we have to predict where that target should be placed on the ground, on the floor. Well, what do you need to measure to make that prediction? What do we need to know? What do we need to measure with our meter sticks and our stopwatch and so on to make that prediction, to predict where that ball is going to land? Well, I want you to treat this lab just like any other projectile motion problem that we've done. So you would sketch, right? Sketch the situation. I sketched the table and the track and the ball coming off, the trajectory of the ball coming off. And I labeled some things that I might want to know. What I really want to know is what delta x is, how far to put it away from the edge of the tabletop on the floor. And so some of the things that I'm going to need to measure are this vertical height. I can do that with the meter stick. And also measure the speed of the ball as it leaves the table. And that's what you're going to use your stopwatch for. So maybe you can measure the distance the ball travels on the table and the time it takes to travel that distance on the table. And that'll tell you the speed, or at least the average speed, when it leaves the table. And you use those two things to predict where it's going to land. So your givens and unknowns, well, you're not given so much, you have to measure. So really maybe it's your M and U, your measured values and your unknowns. Make it in your XY chart. Go ahead and do that tonight before you get to the lab. And then equation substitute and solve, just like normal. At the very end, I want you to do a percent error calculation. Percent error just tells you how far away you were from the expected value. So this is your prediction, your expected value, and the actual distance is where you landed. So maybe you predict 50 centimeters and you're 2 centimeters short, which means your actual was 48 centimeters. And so you can calculate percent error that way. If it's less than 10%, that's fine, that's acceptable. If it's less than 5%, that's great. If it's 0%, I won't believe you, because there's always some error. If you get negative error, that means you fell short. If you get positive error, you went a little bit too far. If it's greater than 10% on the first try, call me over to your lab table and we'll see if we can figure out what happened and get you under 10% on the next try.